The village of Mombol sat between long fields, tall grass and warm red soil. Every morning the sun rose slowly over the hills, touching the roofs of mud houses with soft gold light. People in the village woke early, farmers, traders, mothers, children, and walked through the paths that curved like rivers. In the center of Mombol stood a small workshop made of clay bricks and old wood. Inside that workshop worked a young man named Cato. Cato was not very tall, but he had strong hands, calm eyes, and a quiet smile that came and went like a soft breeze. He had learned to carve wood since he was a little boy. His father once carved too, but he passed away when Cato was still young, so Cato learned by watching older men in the village and practicing every day. He had a gift. When he touched wood, it seemed to listen to him as if it understood what shape he wanted it to become. But the workshop did not belong to Cato. It belonged to a man named Mr. Lumo. Mr. Lumo was known in the village for being loud and proud. He spoke with a heavy voice and liked people to look at him. He ran the workshop for many years, and he liked to remind everyone that he was the master of the craft, even though he had not carved anything beautiful in a very long time. Cato worked for him because he needed a place, tools and money to support himself. At first, Cato thought working for Mr. Lumo would help him grow, but very soon, he understood that Mr. Lumo wanted more from him than simple work. Mr. Lumo wanted credit for Cato's talent. Every day, Cato arrived early, even before the birds in the mango trees started singing. He swept the floor, cleaned the tools and prepared wood blocks for carving. When Mr. Lumo came late in the morning, he walked around the workshop with his big steps, looking at Cato's work with half interest. Then he would nod proudly and say, "Yes, yes. This is what I taught you," even though he never taught Cato anything. There were two other helpers in the workshop, Amina and Jalea. Amina was older than Cato and liked to paint the carvings after they were shaped. Jalea was young, cheerful and always humming little songs. They both liked Cato because he was gentle and never looked down on anyone. They also knew that most of the beautiful work in the workshop came from Cato's hands, not Mr. Lumo's. One warm morning, the sun was bright and the air smelled of sweet maize being roasted outside. Cato sat at his carving bench, working on 3 wooden stools for a family that lived near the river. The stools were special. Each had a pattern that showed a different story from the village's old tales. One pattern had a bird flying over mountains, another had a drum surrounded by dancing women, and the last had fish moving in a circle like a dancing ring in the water. Cato carved slowly, smoothing the edges with patient hands. Amina and Jalea watched him sometimes, not to disturb him but to enjoy the way he carved. When Cato carved, his whole face softened, and his hands moved like he was playing music. Mr. Lumo entered the workshop late that morning, wearing a bright shirt and a proud smile. He looked at the stools and raised his eyebrows. "Ah, look at this fine work," he said loudly so anyone passing outside could hear. "My workshop is the best in Mombol because I teach my workers well." Amina and Jalea exchanged a quiet look but said nothing. They did not want trouble. Cato simply nodded politely and continued carving, even though inside he felt a small sting. He did not want praise, he only wanted respect. But Mr. Lumo was not done. He walked around, pointing at the carvings and telling Amina and Jalea how he guided Cato's hand. This was not true. Cato worked alone. Mr. Lumo rarely even came close when he was carving, but he always wanted people to believe he created everything. Later that day, a few villagers came to look at the stools. They admired them with wide eyes, touching the smooth wood and praising the design. Cato smiled softly at their kind words, but before he could say anything, Mr. Lumo stepped forward. "Yes, yes. My workshop is famous for this," he said, patting Cato's shoulder loudly. "This boy is learning well from me. I trained him." Cato stood still. Amina looked down at her paintbrush. Jalea rolled her eyes when Lumo was not looking. The villagers believed Mr. Lumo, because that was the only story they heard. After the villagers left, Mr. Lumo laughed loudly and said, "Cato, be happy I allow you to work here. Your hands are good, but without my workshop you would be nobody." Those words cut deeper than any tool could. Cato did not answer, but inside something shifted. He loved carving, but he did not love being treated like he was nothing. He knew he deserved better. He knew his father, who taught him to be humble but proud of his gift, would not want him to be used like this. The sun began to set, filling the workshop with orange light. The smell of wood dust mixed with the evening breeze. Cato looked at the stools he made, at his tools, at his hands. He thought of all the days he spent carving from morning to evening, while someone else put his name on the work. Amina noticed the sadness on his face. She walked to him quietly and said, "Cato, your hands are blessed. Do not let anyone steal that from you." Jalea added, "One day people will know your name. Not his." Cato smiled gently at them. Their words warmed his heart, but they also made him see the truth more clearly. Staying in the workshop meant staying in the shadow of someone who did not value him. That night he walked home slowly, thinking deeply. The stars shone bright above him, and the moon looked like a silver bowl in the sky. Cato loved his village. He loved the sound of drums at night, the laughter of children, the warm greetings from elders. He wanted to grow, but he knew he could not grow under someone who made him feel small. When he reached his home, he sat beside a small lamp and took a clean sheet of paper. His hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the weight of the decision he was making. He picked up a pencil and began to write. The letter was short, but every word came from his heart. When he finished, he folded the letter gently and placed it on the table. He looked at it for a long moment. That small paper meant a big change was coming. And Cato, for the first time in a long while, felt free. The morning sun rose gently over Mombol, painting the roofs and trees with soft gold light. Birds hopped across the dusty road, singing as if they wanted to wake the whole village. Inside the workshop, Cato sat at his bench carving the final touches on the 3 wooden stools he had worked on for many days. His eyes were calm, his hands steady, and the small sound of the carving knife sliding on the wood filled the air like a quiet song. Amina mixed paint at the other side of the room, and Jalea swept the floor while humming a little tune. The workshop smelled of fresh shavings, warm air, and morning hope. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But that peace did not last long. Mr. Lumo pushed open the wooden door, entering the workshop with loud steps. He wore a bright shirt and walked like a man who believed he owned not only the building but the air around it too. His eyes looked around, searching for something to criticize. He saw the stools first. 3 beautiful creations, smooth and shining, each carrying a story carved with care. Amina and Jalea smiled at them proudly, knowing Cato had poured his heart into every curve and line. Mr. Lumo crossed his arms and gave a long hum, pretending he was examining them with great skill. Then he chuckled. "Again you spent so much time on simple stools," he said loudly. "You really think you can do something without me?" Amina stopped mixing her paint. Jalea stopped sweeping. Cato did not look up. He had heard many insults before. But this morning felt different, heavier somehow. Mr. Lumo walked closer and tapped one of the stools with his thick finger. "You carved these, yes," he said. "But don't think you can survive out there without my workshop. Without me you are nothing. You hear me? Nothing." Amina's eyes filled with quiet anger. Jalea's mouth dropped open. She whispered under her breath, "Why does he talk like that?" But Mr. Lumo heard nothing except his own voice. He liked the way it sounded when he spoke down to others. Made him feel big. Cato finally lifted his eyes. He looked at Mr. Lumo not with anger but with a calm sadness. He wiped the wood dust from his hands and stood up slowly. "I am leaving today," he said softly. Amina gasped. Jalea dropped her broom. Even the birds outside seemed to fall silent for a moment. Mr. Lumo blinked, then burst into laughter. It was a loud, deep laugh that echoed off the walls. "You," he shouted. "Leave? Where will you go? You cannot even pay for your own tools. Do you think these skills belong to you? You learned everything here, under me." Cato began packing his tools into his old cloth bag, his carving knife, his small hammer, his sandpaper, his brushes. He placed them gently inside one by one. His hands did not shake. He had already made this decision in his heart the night before. Lumo kept laughing. He strutted around the workshop like a proud rooster. "You will crawl back," he said loudly. "You will run out of money and you will return here begging. You think anyone will buy your carvings without my name on them? My name is what makes this workshop shine." Jalea frowned. "Your name?" she muttered low so that only Amina heard. "It is Cato who makes this place shine." Amina touched her arm gently, asking her not to say more. They both watched Cato, their hearts tight with worry and respect. Cato tied the top of his tool bag and stood tall. His face looked peaceful, almost too peaceful for someone being insulted so loudly. He walked toward Mr. Lumo. "I'm not coming back," Cato said, his voice calm like morning water. "I am thankful for the time here. But I must go." Mr. Lumo laughed again, short, sharp, cruel. "You think you have a choice?" he shouted. "You are walking away from your future. You are nothing without me, Cato. Nothing. You should be thanking me every day you wake up and come into this workshop." Cato reached into his pocket and pulled out a small sealed letter. A plain envelope, folded neatly with Mr. Lumo's name written on the front. "For you," Cato said quietly. Mr. Lumo snatched the letter from Cato's hand. What is this? A thank you note? A small apology? He sneered. Or maybe you want me to chase after you and tell you to stay. Ah, do not dream, boy. Cato shook his head softly. It is just what I needed to say. Mr. Lumo waved the letter around like it was nothing before stuffing it into his pocket without even looking at it. Cato walked to the door. Amina stepped forward. Cato, she whispered, are you sure? He nodded. It is time. Jalea moved close too. Where will you go? Cato smiled gently. Where my heart can work freely. Amina felt tears gather in her eyes. Jalea looked down, kicking the dust with her toe. They did not want him to leave, but they knew he deserved better than the sharp words he heard every day. Cato bowed his head slightly to both of them. Thank you, he said, for your kindness. Then he stepped outside. The sunlight touched his face as he walked out the door for the last time. The warm air brushed his skin like a blessing. For the first time in many years he felt light, like someone had lifted a heavy stone from his back. Behind him Mr. Lumo called out, Go on. You will see. The world is harder than you think. But Cato did not look back. He walked down the village path, passing children playing near the well, passing old men sitting under a mango tree, passing houses that smelled of morning porridge. Every step felt new. Every breath felt fresh. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew he was free. Inside the workshop, Mr. Lumo finally stopped laughing. He reached into his pocket and felt the letter he had not opened yet. For a moment he wondered why Cato gave it to him. But he shook away the thought. Nothing important, he said aloud. But Amina and Jalea exchanged a look. They knew that letter meant something. They felt it the moment they saw it in Cato's hand. And far down the road, Cato walked with quiet strength, carrying nothing but his tools and his courage, knowing this was the beginning of something new. When Cato left Mr. Lumo's workshop, he did not know exactly where he was going. He only knew he needed a place where his heart could breathe. He walked through Mombol with his bag of tools, past the market, past the tall acacia trees, and past the river where children played in the shallow water. The village was full of life, but Cato felt like he was walking toward something new, something bright even if he could not yet see it clearly. He found an old storage hut at the edge of the village. It was small and dusty with broken windows and a roof that needed repair. Most people in the village did not use it anymore. But when Cato opened the door, sunlight fell across the old wooden floor, and he saw the shape of a workshop inside its emptiness. It was quiet. It was simple. It was his. Cato cleaned the whole place by himself. He swept the floor, wiped the walls, and repaired the broken door with leftover planks. He fixed the roof with pieces of tin he found near the market. The work took many days, but he felt happy doing it. His hands were strong, and his heart felt lighter with every improvement he made. When he finished, he placed his tools on a small old table and breathed deeply. This will be a good place, he said softly. Word spread quickly in Mombol that Cato had opened a new workshop. At first, people came out of curiosity. They wanted to see what he was doing. Some only came because they heard he left Mr. Lumo, and that alone created excitement in the village. But when they saw Cato's carvings displayed on a wooden shelf, their curiosity turned into admiration. A small boy named Baraka was one of the first young people to visit. Baraka was thin, full of energy, and always asking questions. He loved to draw shapes in the dirt with a stick. When he saw Cato carving a small wooden bird, his eyes grew wide. How do you make the wings look real? Baraka asked. Cato smiled. With patience, he said. And with love for the work. Baraka stayed the whole morning watching him carve. The next day he returned, and the day after that too. Soon he began carving his own tiny shapes. His hands were clumsy at first, but Cato encouraged him gently. Every master was once a beginner, Cato told him. Another young boy named Tendo joined later. Tendo was quiet, thoughtful, and liked to observe things before trying them. He admired Cato's steady hands and wanted to learn how to carve stools like the ones that had made Cato known in the village. Cato taught him how to choose the right wood, how to feel its weight, and how to listen to the sound it made under the knife. A girl named Leia also came. Leia loved colors, patterns, and stories. She wanted to learn how to paint carvings so they looked alive. Cato showed her how to use simple brushes, how to mix paints, and how to understand the spirit of each carving before choosing a color. Leia painted so well that people began asking for her designs on bowls and toys. Soon more children and young artists started to come. Some wanted to learn carving. Some wanted to paint. Some simply wanted a safe place to sit and watch. Cato welcomed them all. Every morning, the workshop was full of laughter, the sound of scraping tools, soft brushes, and wooden shavings that covered the floor like small curls. The young artists learned more than carving. They learned kindness, respect, teamwork, and patience. No one shouted at them. No one mocked their mistakes. Kato taught them that mistakes were not failures. They were part of the journey. Parents in the village noticed the change in their children. They saw Baraka's bright smile, Tendo's growing confidence, and Leia's new passion for painting. Parents began visiting the workshop to thank Kato. Some brought food, some brought small gifts, and some simply came to watch. One day the village chief came with a walking stick decorated with old designs. He looked around Kato's workshop, studying the carvings on the shelves, the stools, bowls, and toys. Children were gathered around Kato, listening to him explain how to smooth the edges of a wooden mask. The chief nodded slowly. "You have brought new life to our village," he said. "You are teaching them not only art but hope." Kato bowed respectfully. "I only give them what I once needed," he said softly. As weeks passed, Kato's carvings began to travel beyond Mambo. Traders visited the workshop and bought many pieces to sell in nearby towns. People in distant villages began to ask for carvings made by the young man from Mambo who teaches children. His work became known for its warmth, its detail, and its spirit. Each piece carried a story, a dream, or a memory of his village. Still, Kato never let fame change him. He kept teaching in the same gentle way. He let Baraka carve animals, Tendo carve stools, and Leia paint masks in bright colors. He guided them, helped them, and listened to them. He encouraged them to trust their hands and trust their hearts. The workshop grew so lively that people passing by often stopped just to enjoy the sound of children laughing or to watch young artists focused on their work. Some villagers even brought wood from their farms and asked Kato and his students to turn it into something beautiful. Elders came too. They praised Kato, blessing him with words of wisdom. They said he was lifting the community. They said he reminded them of the old days when art was respected and taught with kindness. Kato always bowed and said, "Thank you. This workshop belongs to all of us." One afternoon, when the sun was soft and the shadows long, Kato stood at the doorway of his workshop. He watched Baraka drawing a new idea, Tendo shaping a stool leg, Leia painting a wooden drum with bright patterns. He listened to their laughter. He felt the warm breeze on his face. He thought of the day he walked out of Mr. Lumo's workshop with nothing but a small bag of tools and a letter. He thought of the fear he had felt, the confusion, the hope. Now, standing in his own workshop, surrounded by young artists who believed in him, he felt a deep sense of peace. He whispered to himself, "This is what freedom feels like." And indeed it was freedom. Freedom to create. Freedom to grow. Freedom to lift others. Kato had not just risen again, he had helped others rise with him. The days in Mambo passed quietly at first, but soon the whole village began to notice a change. People who once visited Mr. Lumo's workshop now walked past it, heading toward the edge of the village where Kato's new workshop stood. Even early in the morning, when the air was cool and the sky still pale, families, traders, and visitors were already on their way to see Kato's work. Lumo watched these people from his doorway with growing worry. His workshop, once busy, now felt empty. The tools were still there, the shelves still stood, but the life inside had faded. The loud sounds of carving, talking, and laughter were gone. Even Amina and Jalea, who still worked there, moved more quietly than before. One morning, a man looking to buy a carved stool walked into Lumo's workshop. Lumo greeted him with his usual loud voice. But the man only looked around, frowned, and asked, "Do you have stools like the ones Kato makes?" Lumo tried to hide his irritation. "My stools are better," he said quickly. "He only learned from me." But the customer shook his head. "I want something with heart," he replied. "Something made with care. I will go to Kato." And he walked out. Lumo felt a sting in his chest, sharp and sudden. He waved it off and pretended he was not bothered. But deep inside, the truth began to settle like heavy stones. Each day more customers left. Some didn't even step into the workshop. They simply walked past without looking. Amina and Jalea noticed Lumo's growing silence. He was no longer laughing. He no longer walked proudly around the workshop. Instead, he sat at his table staring at his hands or at the door through which customers used to enter. One afternoon, when the sun was bright and children played outside, Amina approached him slowly. "Sir," she said gently, maybe you should talk to Kato." Lumo looked up sharply. "Talk to him? Why should I talk to him?" Jalea, standing nearby, answered softly, "Because he tried to talk to you with the letter." Lumo's jaw tightened. He still had that letter. He kept it in a drawer in the corner, folded carefully. He read it almost every night even though it made his chest feel tight. The words stayed in his mind like shadows that refused to leave. The truth inside the letter followed him everywhere. Respect, kindness, growth. Words Cato used without anger or blame. Words Lumo had forgotten long ago. For many days Lumo struggled with himself. Pride pulled him one way. The truth pulled him another. He wanted to pretend that he didn't care, that he didn't need Cato, that he was still the master craftsman of the village. But each time he looked at the empty workshop, each time he remembered Cato's quiet hands at work, each time he read the letter, something inside him softened. One evening when the sky turned pink and the birds rested in the trees, Lumo made a decision. He picked up the letter, brushed off a bit of dust, and held it carefully as if holding something fragile. Then he walked out of his workshop and began heading toward the edge of the village. His steps were slow. He felt nervous, a feeling he had not felt in years. Everyone in the village seemed to be watching him, though maybe that was just his own imagination. He passed the market, the narrow road by the river, and the small stone path that led to Cato's workshop. When he reached the doorway he froze. The workshop was full of life. Children laughed as they tried carving little animals. Young artists bent over their work with focus in their eyes. Leia painted a bright red drum. Tendo carved a stool leg with steady hands. Baraka proudly showed a carved bird to a group of younger children. And in the middle of it all stood Cato, calm and smiling, guiding a little girl as she shaped her first wooden spoon. Lumo felt a strange warmth and sadness in his chest at the same time. This young man whom he once tried to hold down had created something beautiful, something full of hope, something he himself had never built. Cato turned and saw him standing at the doorway. His eyes widened slightly but his face stayed gentle. He handed the girl her spoon and told her to keep practicing. Then he walked toward Lumo quietly. For a moment neither of them spoke. Lumo swallowed hard. His voice, usually loud and firm, came out soft and unsteady. Cato. I came to talk. Cato nodded. You are welcome. Lumo looked around the workshop again. You have built something good here. Cato smiled lightly. It grew because of the people in it. Lumo lowered his head. His fingers tightened around the letter. I read your words. Many times. Cato said nothing. He let him speak. I treated you poorly, Lumo said slowly. I did not respect you. I do not know why I acted like that. Maybe I was afraid. Maybe I was proud. But I see now. I see what I did. Cato listened calmly. His eyes did not show anger. Only understanding. Lumo continued, his voice trembling. I thought being the master meant being above everyone. But you taught me something I forgot. He took a deep breath. You showed me respect has value. You showed me kindness builds people, not power. Cato looked at him with soft eyes. We all learn in our own time. Lumo finally raised his head. If you allow, I would like to learn too. Those simple words changed the air between them. For the first time Lumo was not speaking like a proud man. He was speaking like someone who wished to grow. Cato stepped forward and held out his hand. You are welcome here, he said gently. There is space for everyone who wants to learn. Lumo stared at the hand for a moment. Then he took it, feeling something warm and new in his heart. Not pride. Not victory. But peace. Baraka, Tendo, and Leia watched from their workbenches. Amina and Jalea, who had followed Lumo quietly from a distance, smiled when they saw the handshake. The workshop felt even brighter than before. Lumo walked inside looking around with new eyes. He saw the future of the village in every young face. He saw hope in the wood carvings, in the laughter, in the colors. And he understood, truly understood, that mocking someone never builds greatness. Respect does. Forgiveness does. Growth does. Cato welcomed him not as an enemy, not as a rival, but as a man who wanted to change. In that small workshop at the edge of Mombol, two men stood side by side, one learning, the other teaching. And the village grew stronger because of it.